Our third and final example in this chapter will be probably one of the best games on open files ever played. Actually, it would be again kind of semi-open files, but using those files to launch an attack. The game is played by Boris Gelfand versus Sergei Karjakin by the World Cup in Hantimansisk 2009. It started as a peaceful Italian e4, e5, bishop c4, knight f6, d3, knight c6, knight f3, bishop e7. Castles, castles, bishop b3. Here Boris Gelfand plays move which fits by a strategy in Italian. If bishop is on e7, even if it's on c5, move d5. He wants to take center, e d5, knight d5. What is the drawback? Well, the drawback is that white does have some development advantage, so black needs to be a little bit careful about this pawn. h3. For example, move rook e1 can be played hitting on a pawn. Actually, this idea of a Gelfand, so in this position to push d5, is essentially a pawn sacrifice, can result into pawn sacrifice, because after take, what happened? If white plays move rook e1, black's best move is bishop g4. And now white can go for a pawn win. h3, bishop h5, g4, bishop g6, knight e5. Knight e5, rook e5, c6, and we have some position where black should get compensation, almost like Marshall gambit, but bishop is for some reason on g6, and white has weakened his king by pushing pawn to g4. For example, queen f3, and here probably bishop d6, playing almost like a Marshall gambit, rook to e2, f5 is offering rather good compensation to white, let's say g5, f4, very good compensation for sacrifice pawn. This particular game, this particular position even happened in a game between Kramnik and Kasparov in tournament in Novgorod in '95. Kasparov did not push his f-pawn, strange enough. He played move bishop f6, developing bishop but putting it in front of his pawn. And well, rook e2, king h8, and now Kramnik eliminated the knight with bishop d5, cd5, knight c3. Now it's some pleasant situation. He wants to take a pawn. Well, black cannot push pawns, so Kasparov took bishop c3, bc3. But here, well, white is a pawn up, and here actually black does not really have enough compensation for his sacrifice material. So in such a position, should you ever get into this, play for f-pawn push. So this type of play, bishop e6, rook e2, f5. And this kind of play is looks rather dangerous, g5, f4. Plenty of pieces. No need to be afraid to sacrifice another pawn, let's say such a business. Why? Because, well, king is open. King is very much open, and no need to be really worried about this. This is now fantastic martial attack for a black. But okay, let's get back to the game. Karjakin was not in a mood to enter this, understandably so. He played move h3. Which has a plus point. Well, the plus point that his bishop cannot come to g4 to execute this unpleasant pin. But on the other hand, black now does not have a problem to defend his e5 pawn. Gelfand here played move which would turn to be very useful. He played move a5, provoking move a4. Why is it handy? Well, it is handy because once move a4 is provoked, any time when this knight jumps to d4, bishop on b3 will be more or less hanging, because you don't want to take c takes b3. So a5, a4, bishop a4 was possible, but this looks like fantastic pawn sacrifice. Let's say knight d4, knight e5, knight b6. It was even played in a practical game between Shirov and Mozatic in Tilburg 1993. c3 Shirov played, knight took on a4, queen a4, knight e2, king h1, bishop f6. Black had tremendous compensation for his sacrificed pawn, more than just a compensation. So Karjakin played move a4, and Gelfand now used the inclusion of this a5, a4 moves, and here he played move knight e4. Obviously, Karjakin is not in the mood to collect this pawn, because you take this pawn, but okay, knight b3, c b3, let's say knight b4. Black has a pair of bishops. d3 is a pawn weakness. It is very easy to understand that Karjakin was not interested in such a pawn. So he played move knight takes d4. e4, rook e1. We have here important moment. Why? Because most probably White thought that he is going to be playing, let's say, safe, small advantage. Why? Because, well, Black has more space. Yes, this pawn came to d4, so Black has more space. But space does not always necessarily leads to advantage, because taking more space, Black also did give some squares. What does White want with rook e1? White wants very simple thing. Well, this bishop is hanging, so White wants bishop d5 takes and grab a piece, right? What does it look like? Well, it looks like that Black has more or less only one really sensible move, and this is move bishop e6, making sure that he doesn't lose a piece. White will probably play move knight a3, or maybe even knight e2, one of those two moves. Queen will maybe go to f3. White has some squares, controls some file. White is a little bit better with actually without any kind of risk. This knight will most likely go to c4 or a3 and c4. I don't think that Black would give his bishop pair, but knight can go to basically d2. I can eliminate this, and this will be just a rather safe advantage. And this is anyway what Karjakin probably thought. If Black moves this bishop, well, not much will change. So I can play move queen f3, bishop e6, and now develop my knight. Knight goes to e4. Another very nice, pleasant, safe advantage for White, with zero risk. But what else can Black do here? Black here, Gelfand comes up with an incredible idea. And this was over the board play. It was not computer preparation. And to come up with this move, which he now played, you need, first of all, you need to get an idea itself. So you need to find an idea, and then you need to calculate very well, and then actually you need courage to trust your calculation. And actually he had it all here. He plays here amazing move. Try to remember this. Rook a6. Sacrificing a full piece, but being ready to swing his rook. So this is attacking idea of a rook lift and using open file. Well, this file is not open, there are pawns in front of this, but the rook will come to g6 using g file, so this is basically open file idea. And the rook swing. So all in one. A beautiful idea. First, let's figure out what happens if White takes a piece. Bishop d5. Rook d5, rook e7. It's a full piece, not even a pawn, so Black needs to mate. Rook g6. White here has only two moves to prevent a mate. One is g4, another one is f3. Okay, f3 has a drawback that White can take on h3. g4 does not have this drawback, but g4 weakens king. Now actually Black can win in attack. Queen h5, let's just see how can the line go. Rook e4, probably best move, because f3, f5 does not change anything, it only brings extra piece into play. Move queen f3 is quite stupid because it drops a queen, right? It loses queen for nothing. bishop g4, a g4, rook g4, king f1, rook g1, and now drops a queen, going to e2 does not change anything. So queen h5, rook e4, queen h3, g5, queen f1 does not really work because rook g4, queen g4. Now already actually situation has improved for black because he took 2 pawns in the process, so he's even nothing down at the moment. Queen g2, queen d1, queen f1. Now black can, when you play a practical game, you basically stop here with the calculating. Why? Because you can first of all give a perpetual, you can grab a pawn, so you have already 3 pawns, you are nothing down, and you can continue tremendous attack with queen h5, with bishop h3 to follow, and this is in this particular case winning attack because king is weak, rook is going to enter the fight using e-file, again open file, and white yet needs to finish his development. So this is easy part, this calculating deal. Bit more difficult is to calculate what happens with g5. Because now you still have only one single pawn for a sacrifice piece. f5, rook e5, f4, cutting out the bishop. Queen f1, hoping to trade queens. Because if you don't play move queen f1, I can even play move f3. And then I would have a check and I will mate. So queen f1, queen h4, queen g2, hoping to improve queen. Rook f5 here is very strong move. Rook f5 is very strong move. Why? Because you cannot give queen d5 check, because bishop e6 will kill you. You don't have a clever way to take on e6, because king is weak. And if check, rook f8 with winning advantage, because now somehow everything will go wrong. This king is horrible. There is not a single piece defending this miserable king. And if on rook f5, bishop f5, queen check, then it is still winning attack. Rook e6. Only move, because if you play move bishop e6, well, white has at least a draw. Probably not at least, also at most, but it has a draw by checking, because king cannot get out. Rook e6. Bishop cannot be taken because of obvious mate. And queen h1. But what happens, sorry, rook e6, what happens if knight d2? How to mate? Because problem is that rook is pinned. Well, then queen g5, very important check. King h2, and now square has been covered, so king moves with a winning attack, because now the problem is that queen d8 doesn't exist, and I do threaten a check and rook to enter into fight, or I threaten mate in 1. So there is no defense here. In order to prevent mate in 1, white would need to give a full queen, which will result in a mate some moves later. So this is what Gelfand needed to calculate. What is another option after bishop d5, taking a piece, queen d5, rook e7, rook g6, it is move f3. A little bit more conservative, of course, you don't want to push pawn to g4, but it allows bishop h3. Now rook e2 only move. Queen f3. Black has collected already 2 pawns, but can he win? Queen f1. Unfortunately for black, he cannot win this, because white has a lot of pieces around his king, and now the best move for black, I mean, white cannot just go away, because then black cannot just go away, because white will start bringing his forces to the rescue of his king. Or to e4, he starts to bring his pieces into play. So best for black is to take on g2, rook g2, rook g2, queen g2, and queen d1, and keep giving queen f1, queen g4, keep giving perpetual check. Apparently, in a press conference, Karjakin said after a game that he did see this variation, but he didn't want to go into it. He wanted more out of the position. So now let's see what he did. So Karjakin did not want to allow this draw. Brave decision. He played move queen h5, hitting on this knight. Knight b4. Very logical move. Gelfand later, though, criticized this his own decision and said that the better move was bishop b4, controlling e1 square. And after rook e2, rook e6. Rook e6 is a very strong move. The point is that in order to play move bishop b4, you need to realize that here rook e6 is a strong move. And after, let's say, rook e6, bishop e6, probably black has a little bit better game, because black bishop is very strong, controlling this diagonal, and also black is actually here having advantage in development. White yet needs to develop his queen side. So this was a better move. But Gelfand played move knight b4, knight a3, logical move. Knight d2 was another move. Trying to bring knight to central squares. On knight d2, let's say rook h6 is probably a good move. And on queen a5, b6. Here, for example, where to go with the queen? Queen to e5 looks most logical. But queen to e5 has a tactical problem. What is tactical problem? I give you a hint. Rook on e1 can be problem. Knight c2 is a tactical shot, because you cannot take bishop c2 because rook e6, winning a rook or a queen. And if queen e7, or knight c2, on knight c2, if queen e7, then takes on e7, rook e7, knight a1. And white is exchange up. Yes, this knight is very stupid, but this knight will eventually get out. So the best move here for black, a little bit bizarre move, would be move queen a8. But it's obvious that white has fantastic compensation. If white does not have anything better, he can just lock this queen, and for a love of only one pawn, it is a fantastic compensation. So knight a3. Rook g6, very logical. We have here different moves, but Karjakin probably plays the most logical move, bishop f4. He develops bishop, and he wants to make sure that bishop can come to g3 square in order to protect king, to put something on this g file. b6. Gelfand is undecided where to go with his bishop, and of course he wants to give himself options. Why not? He wants to have options to attack on this diagonal, and also maybe to move bishop to b7 and to utilize the longest diagonal. So b6, queen f3. Karjakin wants to stop this bishop from coming to b7. Best move was probably move bishop g3, where after bishop d6, cleaning this file, bishop d6, queen d6, black should have some advantage. Should have some advantage due to the fact that he still has attacking options. Still has these attacking options. Karjakin played move queen f3 in order to stop this bishop from coming to b7, and he most probably missed the idea which Gelfand now came up with. Gelfand is now going to force a trade which is optically going to weaken his pawn structure, but he will get an open file. He would employ his another rook, and then he will tremendously use two files, to actually get the deadly attack. Do you get an idea what Gelfand played here? He played here excellent move bishop e6. Allowing bishop e6. By the way, with white you cannot just, let's say, stay put, not to do anything. To play, let's say, rook e2, with the idea to bring another rook to e1. Why? There is a tactical shot here. I give you a hint. The tactical shot is related to g2 square. Here, brilliant tactical shot is knight c2. You cannot take bishop c2 because bishop d5. Queen h5, and okay, let's say rook g2. King moves, rook back to g6. Black has already 2 pawns and has actually tremendous attack. Black should win here. It is more than just compensation. And if on knight c2 bishop takes e6, then simply knight a1. And again, similar to previous line, let's say bishop c4, c6. Okay, this knight is very stupid knight, but it will eventually get out. You cannot really catch it. Like on rook e1, I can take knight c2. It will get out the knight. So it is impossible. So here Karjakin needed to take on e6, and he did. F6. Now we see the result of this Gelfand's decision. He has 2 tremendous rooks on actually 2 open files. You may call it semi-open or whatever, but he's utilizing the files. And those files are leading to deadly attack. King has limited protection, and white yet needs to somehow bring his pieces in play. Not so easy, because this knight is also having a duty to protect c2 pawn. In a higher sense, this position is probably winning position for black, because black is having an advantage, and also it is very difficult to defend with white, even for Karjakin, who is famous for his defending skills. Karjakin plays most logical move, queen e4. He wants to get out of this f-file pin. Now what to do? Gelfand now does a principal decision, which is actually very instructive. Black has attack, but there is no immediate kill. So what he does, he removes the defender. What is defender? Well, bishop on f4 is actually defender. It can come to square g3, and it is a defender. Bishop d6, removing the defender. Bishop d6. By the way, bishop d6 is a pawn sacrifice. But he sacrifices a pawn in order to remove the defender and bring an attacker. Attacker is going to be his queen. Bishop d6. C takes, sacrificing a pawn. Queen d4, pawn needs to be taken, because if I push e5 with rook f4 to follow, queen g5, okay, black is going to be having free attack and considerably better position. So queen d4 is needed. At least if white is under this terrible attack, let him take some pawn. Queen g5, g3. Nobody loves to play such a move, but here unfortunately there is not really much of a choice, because otherwise, if queen defends a pawn, well then how to continue attack? Well, bring another attacker, knight d5, and knight comes to f4 with devastating consequences. Queen g4 move does not really help due to similar reason. Let's say queen f6, queen e2, knight e5. And again, knight comes to f4 with devastating consequences. So queen g5, g3, queen f5, causing further weaknesses. Of course, when you are attacking the king, cause to further weaknesses. And Gelfand does it. black now cannot keep his stuff together. Because if h4, e5, queen e3 to protect the pawn, and now on queen b6 same stuff will basically happen. So queen e3, and now again this knight comes with devastating force. Knight e5, queen e2, knight e4. As often seen, when your attack does not win instantly, but you can bring an extra force, well, this extra force will make a difference, and here this is this knight. Unfortunately for Karjakin, he cannot defend with his king, because then the problem is very simple tactical shot takes. Maybe there are some other moves, but knight c2 is very simple tactical shot takes, and okay, you simply win the rook ending. The rook ending is simply first of all a pawn up, and active rooks, and also probably some more pawns are going to fall. So g4, only move, and now h5, challenging those pawns, rook e4, d5. On rook e5, simple move, queen f6, and black cannot keep his stuff white cannot keep his stuff together. Let's say queen e3, h4, h4 to try to keep position close, but it doesn't help. Queen takes, rook e6, and now simple move g3, threatening forced mate, threatening queen h2 check, and threatening g takes f2 with devastating consequences. Simple check, king moves, and okay, check. Maybe there are some other wins, but this is convincing enough. And so on. Taking by queen, rook f2. So this is simply going to be good enough. And maybe there are also some, I would not be surprised if there are some other wins in this position. So d5. Here Karjakin wants to defend in ingenious way. He plays move king h2, using the fact that this queen is hanging. But even as good defender as he is now, it is too late to keep this position. Queen f3, rook is attacked, rook e1, ag4. Black is now actually no longer material down, and this attack is continuing with the full force. Queen e3. And here Boris Gelfand says, well, nobody said that game must finish with mate. A winning ending is also good enough. He takes g takes h3, queen f3, rook f3. Black is a pawn up with attack. Rook g1 only move. Rook f2. Actually, rook g1 is not only move, but there are no moves here, because if rook e2 will be a same story again, check and take. So actually, White's problem here after move rook f3 is that he's one pawn down, but it's not over. He will lose some more material. That's why Gelfand decided to actually go for this, because it is simply over. Rook g1, rook check, king h3 only move, rook g1, rook g1, knight c2. Well, White has survived mating attack. There is not going to be mate, but black is simply too many pawns up. Knight b5, rook f3, collecting some more pawns. King g4, rook d3, knight d6, knight e3, king f4, and now elegant move knight to f4. Sorry, knight to c4, and in this position White resigned, because simply he doesn't have any moves here, so rather sensible decision to lay down the weapons, because moves like, let's say, knight to e8, he does not threaten anything. I can even give a check if I want to, and move my king. Having these extra pawns, there is no any hope of a perpetual check here. So what I like in this game is the following two decisions, and I think that's why I kind of love it. He started here by pushing move a5, somehow preparing the ground for the things to come. After a4, then came this position. Tremendous rook lift idea and excellent calculation by Gelfand with rook a6. Karjakin, okay, making a mistake, not taking a piece and going for this f3 drawing line, which I did show. But if he did do it, then we would not have seen this beautiful game. So Karjakin showing courage. Gelfand utilizing the G file. And then the next beautiful moment of the game, opening up the f file too by playing here a move bishop e6, seemingly damaging his own pawn structure after bishop e6, fe6, but now using two open files for a deadly attack. So this is one of the, I think, most beautiful games when it comes to utilizing your rooks on the open files, and with this I close this particular chapter.